Morning, children. My voice is clear, no? My voice is clear? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And children, last class we learned about which kingdom? Malavika, Prabil, which kingdom we discussed in detail?
Kingdom Protesta.
Kingdom Protesta. So which are the different groups or different classes coming under Kingdom Protesta? Devi Krishna. Devi Krishna.
Protozoans, chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, and slime modules.
Now without referring.
Protozoans, chrysophytes, euglenoid, dinoflagellates, and slime modules.
Okay. And some general features also we had learned. Meherin, what are the general features that we learned?
Ma'am, about Protesta,
Yes, in general about Protista.
they are primarily aquatic. Then it includes single-celled eukaryotes because they don't have a well-defined nuclear membrane. Then they can reproduce both sexually and asexually.
Once again, you said they are prokaryotes.
So, no, eukaryotes.
Fix on one.
Eukaryotes.
Then, what are eukaryotes?
They have a well-defined nuclear membrane.
What else we learned?
Then it can form link with plants, animals, and fungi.
Okay, so we are going to continue with the same kingdom. And before that, one particular class we learned in detail. And I had mentioned about diatomaceous earth. Analysts, what is meant by diatomaceous earth? Under which class we learned about it?
Chrysophytes.
Chrysophytes include?
Diatoms.
And? Golden algae. Diatom, algae. And what is meant by diatomaceous earth? What is meant by diatomaceous earth? Gaya? What is meant by diatomaceous earth?
The cell wall deposits of diatoms in its habitat over billions of years.
What is special about its cell wall?
Cell wall is indestructible and it is made up of silica.
Silica. So these deposits over millions of years or billions of years will form diatomaceous earth. The cell wall deposits will transform into a diatomaceous earth. And what are the uses of this particular substance? Tom, what are the different uses?
They are used for polishing and for filtration of oils and syrups.
Good. So we'll be continuing. And before that, who is prepared for the seminar today? Meherin, you're prepared now today?
Yes, ma'am.
Malavika. So I'll give you a chance for both of you. How many minutes you will take?
Ma'am, 8 to 10 minutes.
Okay. So let me cover some topic and after that I'll give you a chance. Okay, two of you, Meherin and Malavika. Only two have prepared now today.
Ma'am, I'm getting continuously disconnected, ma'am. Today I'm having some network issues.
Okay, the next class is dinoflagellates. We completed the first class, that is chrysophytes. Now we are moving on to the next one, dinoflagellates. They are mostly marine, found in salt water or found in sea, and they are photosynthetic. They are capable of carrying out photosynthesis. And they are found in different colors, yellow, green, brown, blue, red, depending upon the pigment present in them. So depending upon the pigment present, they come in different colors. So they are found in different colors, and most of them are marine and they can carry out photosynthesis. And the speciality of their cell wall is that the cell wall is provided with stiff cellulose plates. You are familiar with the carbohydrate cellulose. So here also you can see the cell wall is made up of cellulose, but it forms stiff or rigid plate-like structures on the outer surface. So once again, they are mostly marine. They are mostly marine and they are photosynthetic and they come in different colors. They are found in different colors depending upon the pigments present in them. So depending upon the pigment present, they can come in different colors: red, brown, blue. Just a minute. And then what else we learned? What are the other points that we learned, children? Apart from that, the cell wall, speciality of the cell wall we learned. The cell wall is provided with stiff or rigid plates made of cellulose. And these are found on the outer surface. The outer surface of the cell wall is provided with stiff cellulose plates. Anjana, Sunil, you two have connectivity issue. What about Devika?
Yes, ma'am.
These are the 3 points. They are mostly marine. They can carry out, majority of them can carry out photosynthesis. They come in different colors, as you can see in the picture. Depending upon the pigment present, they come in red, green, yellow, blue, brown, different colors. And the speciality of their cell wall is that cell wall is provided with some rigid or stiff cellulosic plates. Most of them are provided with flagella. Flagella, you know, these are the structures which help them in locomotion and also helps them to capture the food. So majority of the dinoflagellates, as the name suggests, they have got 2 flagella, and the positioning is like this. One will be arranged in the longitudinal direction. The other one is kept transversely. In between, in a furrow between, there is a gap or a space between the cell wall plates. I told you the cell wall is made up of plates of cellulose. So in a furrow or a gap or a space is there in between these plates. From there, the flagella will be arising transversely. So one is placed longitudinally, other one is transversely, means horizontally. One is transversely placed in a furrow between the wall plates. And some of them, I told you that it comes in, or they are found in different colors. The red colored one, red dinoflagellates, one example is given, Goniolax. And they undergo rapid multiplication, just like we said in the case of cyanobacteria. They too get rapidly multiplied, and once they multiply rapidly, the sea or the water body appears red in color, just like when there is algal bloom, the entire surface of the water body will appear green. Similarly, red dinoflagellates, when they undergo rapid multiplication, when they increase in number drastically, they'll give a red color surface to the sea. But these, or this red color, or they are not, we can say that they release a particular toxin which can be harmful to the organism surviving. It is not just imparting a red color, at the same time they are releasing a poisonous substance or a toxic substance, and this can kill the other organism, other aquatic organisms. Once again, we learned they are mostly marine and they are photosynthetic, and they come in, or they are found in different colors like red, blue, green, brown, yellow, depending upon the pigment present in them. And their cell wall is unique because their cell wall is provided with stiff or rigid cellulose plates on the outer surface, and they have flagella as the locomotory organs. 2 flagella are present, and hence the name dinoflagellates. One flagellum is arising or placed longitudinally, and the other one is found transversely in the furrow between these cellulosic cell wall plates. And the next point is about red dinoflagellates. Out of the different colored dinoflagellates, red is very harmful because sometimes they can multiply rapidly and they will give a red color to the sea, and not only that, they release a toxic substance which can harm the other aquatic organisms like fishes and all living in water body. And when the sea appears red, by the increase in the number of these red dinoflagellates, you call it as red tides. Red tides means the red color is found on the surface of the sea, and that is due to the increase in the number or rapid multiplication of these red dinoflagellates. One such example, or one example for a red dinoflagellate is Goniolax. So we have completed the points about dinoflagellates. Quick recap we can have before we proceed to the next one, that is euglenoids. Just a minute, children. Okay, dinoflagellates, they are mostly marine and they can carry out photosynthesis. They are autotrophs, and depending upon the pigment present, what pigment is present in them, accordingly they come in different colors. And their cell wall is provided with some stiff and hard plates, and these plates are made of cellulose, and these are present on the outer surface of the cell wall. And they have flagella as a locomotory structures. Majority of them are having two flagella, and hence the name dinoflagellate. And the positioning of these two flagella is slightly different. One is placed longitudinally and the other one arises from a furrow between the cell wall plates, a gap or a space between the two cell wall plates transversely. And then we learned about red tide. Red tide or red tides are caused by red dinoflagellates. So red color dinoflagellates, when they multiply rapidly, they can impart a red color to the sea, and they also release a poisonous substance or a toxic substance which can harm the other aquatic organisms living in the water body. Hope you have no doubts about dinoflagellates. Shall I proceed to the next one, children?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Nimida, you didn't complete writing? You want to see the previous slide? Okay, euglenoids. Hope you have heard about euglena in lower classes. Have you heard about euglena? No. Okay, euglenoids. They are freshwater. Majority of them are freshwater organisms, and they are found in stagnant water, not in flowing water, still water. You can find them. Yes. They don't have a cell wall, but instead of the cell wall, they are provided with a proteinaceous layer, a protein-rich layer, and you call it as pellicle. And the advantage of this pellicle over cellulose, cell wall made of cellulose, is that cellulosic cell wall is very rigid, but this pellicle is very flexible. Just like plasma membrane, this is also very flexible and it makes its body flexible. Once again, the habitat, they are found in freshwater bodies, especially in stagnant water, and cellulosic cell wall or a cell wall made of cellulose is absent here. Instead, they have a layer which is made of protein, a protein-rich layer. You call it as pellicle. You know, cellulose or cell wall is a rigid structure, whereas pellicle is a flexible layer, and this will impart flexibility to its body. They too have two flagella. One is long one, the other one is a small one. So just like in the case of dinoflagellates, you can see two flagella, one small and one long one. They are photosynthetic. As you can see in the picture, they are green in color. This is a representative organism. Euglenoids include several organisms. One typical example is given here, that is euglena. They are photosynthetic in the presence of sunlight. That doesn't mean they always carry out photosynthesis. When conditions are favorable, or when they get enough sunlight, they can carry out photosynthesis and prepare their own food. But sometimes when enough sunlight is not there, when the conditions necessary for photosynthesis are absent, they can even carry out heterotrophic nutrition and they feed on smaller organisms. So they can switch between autotrophic and heterotrophic modes of nutrition. So wherever the conditions or whenever the conditions are favorable, they will carry out photosynthesis, and that is mainly in presence of sunlight. And when sufficient sunlight is not there, they cannot carry out photosynthesis, but they will not get, or they have other methods. They are not going to starve even if sunlight is not there. They switch to the other method, heterotrophic mode of nutrition, and they feed on small organisms. The pigments of euglenoids are identical to those of higher plants. So you know that to carry out photosynthesis, we need chlorophyll. So the pigments present in plants and euglenoids are more or less similar. One typical example is euglena. I'll repeat the points again. Euglenoids include freshwater organisms, and usually they are found in stagnant water, and they can switch between autotrophic and heterotrophic modes of nutrition. When sunlight is available, they can carry out photosynthesis, and in the absence of sunlight, they will carry out heterotrophic mode of nutrition and they'll feed on smaller organisms. And another speciality, another unique feature is that instead of cell wall, they are provided with a flexible layer which you call as pellicle. And locomotory structures are flagella. Two are present, one long and one short one. And the pigments found in euglenoids are similar to that found in higher plants. One typical example is given here, that is euglena. Okay. Now we can quickly summarize the points and start with the seminar. Nehal, can you tell me the points that we discussed about dinoflagellates? Any one point? Anashwara? Dinoflagellates?
They are mostly photosynthetic.
Dinoflagellates, they are mostly photosynthetic and habitat, that also you can add.
Marine.
Marine habitat, and they can carry out photosynthesis. Jyoti Joshi, second point. I'm not able to hear you. Ardra?
They appear yellow, green, brown, blue, or red depending on the main pigment in cells.
Depending upon the pigments present, they are found in different colors. Tushar, another point.
Yes, ma'am. Cell wall has a stiff cellulose platelets on the outer surface.
Good. Then, Basma, another point.
They are mostly marine and photosynthetic.
Mostly marine and photosynthetic, somebody said, no? Another point. First 3 points your classmates said. What else we learned about? Dinoflagellates. From the name itself, you can say 1 point. Dinoflagellates. How many flagella present? Di.
2 flagella. Most of them have 2 flagella.
2. What did you say?
Most of them have 2 flagella. One lies longitudinally.
One is placed longitudinally and the other one is placed
Transversely
in a furrow between the 2 cell wall plates. Then, Valentina, another point.
And due to the rapid multiplication of the red dinoflagellates, the sea appears red.
You're reading, Valentina?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So, what is the name of those? One example was given. One example was listed.
Goniolates.
Goniolates. And how are they harmful?
They release toxins which kills the marine and fish marine animals.
Then we learned about, after that we learned about euglenoids. Eva, euglenoids, tell me the points.
Ma'am, they are mainly freshwater organisms and they are found in stagnant water.
Then, Samia,
Ma'am, they have a they don't have a cell wall, but they have a protein-rich layer called pellicle.
Which you call as?
Pellicle.
Pellicle. What is the advantage of this pellicle? Or how is it useful to the animal or organism? Sorry to say animal, it is coming under Protista, not under animal kingdom. Okay, Samia, how is it useful? It makes its body
flexible.
Sabari, another point?
They have two flagella, one is short and one is long.
Yes, two flagella, one short and one long. Then who else? Anila?
They are photosynthetic in the presence of sunlight.
Then continue, complete that point. They are photosynthetic in the presence of light. Now imagine there is no sunlight. Then they'll die out of hunger.
When devoid of sunlight, they behave like heterotrophics.
They can change to heterotrophic mode of nutrition and they'll feed on smaller organisms. So rest of the classes we'll continue later. Now who is going to begin with seminar? 3 are there, no? Malavika, Aditya and one more.
Nami.
Who is going to begin? I think Meherin is all set. Anybody, you I have no problem. And children, when they start sharing the screen, don't turn off your videos. I'll keep a check and I'll mark here. Okay. You can start, Meherin.
Okay. Can I start?
Oh, yes.
Good morning to all. Today I'm here before you to present a seminar on the topic Properties of Living Organisms from the chapter The Living World. So before starting with the properties of living organisms, we want to know what is a life and what is a living organism. A life is a unique complex organization of molecules expressing through chemical reactions which lead to growth, development, responsiveness, etc. Now we can move on to the properties of living organisms. The first property of living organism is growth. The second one is reproduction. The third one is metabolism. Fourth one is cellular organization. And fifth one is consciousness. Starting with the first one, growth. What do you mean by growth? It is an increase in number and mass of the cells by cell division. There is a difference between growth in both plants and animals. In plants, the growth continues throughout their lifespan, but in animals, the growth takes place only up to a certain age. However, in animals, the cell division continues to take place to replace the lost cells. Basically, growth is an increase in mass and size, and if we consider this mass and size as a criterion for growth, then we can say that non-living organisms are also growing. For example, if you're considering mountain as an example, mountain seems to grow over time due to the surface accumulation of materials. And hence, growth cannot be considered as a defining feature or character of living organisms. In living organisms, the growth takes place from inside. Now, the second property of living organism is reproduction. Reproduction is a process by which the living organisms give rise to their young ones. There are mainly two types of reproduction, sexual reproduction and also asexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, both of the parents are involved, and in asexual reproduction, only a single parent is involved. Asexual reproduction can again be classified into many types. For example, spore formation, then budding, regeneration, and fragmentation. Fungi multiply and spread easily due to the thousands of asexual spores they produce. Then Eastern Hydra reproduces by budding, Planaria reproduces by regeneration, and many of the mosses and filamentous algae reproduces by fragmentation. In unicellular organisms, there is no difference between growth and reproduction because they grow and also reproduce by cell division. and both of these mean the increase in the number of cells. Many of the living organisms cannot reproduce. For example, mules cannot reproduce, then worker bees and infertile couples. So reproduction cannot be considered as a defining character of living organism. Now the third property of living organism is metabolism. What we mean by metabolism is that it is the sum total of all the biochemical reactions taking place inside a living system. Metabolism is anabolism plus catabolism. Anabolism is a reaction for building up and catabolism is a reaction for breaking down. All organisms are made up of chemicals, and if whether these chemicals are small or big, belonging to various classes or groups, they needed to be converted into biomolecules, and this conversion is metabolic reaction or chemical reaction. There are more than thousands of metabolic reactions taking place inside a living system, whether it is unicellular or multicellular. All the plants, animals, and fungi exhibit metabolism. No non-living organisms exhibit metabolism. These metabolic reactions can be demonstrated outside the body of living organisms in cell-free systems, and these isolated metabolic reactions which are taking place outside the body, that is inside a test tube, are neither living nor non-living. Even though these metabolic reactions are a defining property of living organisms, these isolated metabolic reactions cannot be considered as a living thing, but it can be obviously said as living reactions. Now, the fourth property of living organism is cellular organization. All organisms are made up of one or more cells, and it is a defining property of living organisms. The last and final property of living organism is consciousness. It is the ability of organisms to sense their environment and respond to the environmental stimuli like light, water, temperature, other organisms, chemicals, pollutants, etc. It is the most obvious and technically complicated feature of living organisms. We sense our environment through our sense organs. All the plants can sense and respond to the environmental stimuli. And also all the organisms from prokaryotes to most complicated eukaryotes can sense and respond to the environmental stimuli. All the organisms can also handle the chemicals entering their bodies, so they are aware of their surroundings. Only human is the only organism that is conscious about himself or aware of himself. Now, from what we have learned from this 5 properties, only 3 of them are the defining properties of living organism, that is metabolism, cellular organization, and consciousness. The other 2, that is growth and reproduction, are non-defining properties of living organisms. Growth cannot be considered as a defining factor because if you are considering size and mass as a criterion for growth, then we know that non-living things can also be considered as growing. Then reproduction cannot be considered as defining factor because there are many living things which cannot reproduce. Thank you.
Any doubts, children? No doubts. Meherin, well done. A very colorful presentation. You prepared yourself or somebody helped you?
No, ma'am, I prepared.
Well done. Okay. Who is next?
Ma'am, I'll do.
Yes, Malavika. And children, Malavika, just before you start, I could see many of you have turned your videos off. Don't do that, children. I can see who all have turned it off. Sanjana, Atulya and Emilin already informed me. So don't think that since the screen is being shared, we can't make out. We can make out. Don't do that. You are sitting in the class now? Yes, Malavika, you can start. Malavika Vibin is absent today. Is she absent today? Malavika Vibin? Then one more person. Zahan is present now. Zahan, your video was off. Zahan, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any connectivity issue?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Then turn the video on. Who else is absent, children, other than Malavika Vibin? 39 are there. Irene is present. Irene? Okay. Those are the two. Irene and Alina Jason. Alina Varghese, she has opted for bio or she changed? Alina Varghese, any idea? No. Okay. Alina Jason, Irene and Malavika. Okay. Malavika, Prabil can start.
Okay, ma'am. A very warm good morning to all of you. This is Malavika Prebil, and I am here to take a seminar on the taxonomic categorization from order to the kingdom. Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear.
So, moving on. Before we move on, it's important to understand that as we move higher in the taxonomic categorization, that is from species to kingdom, the number of organism increases. Here you can see, but the diversity also increases, or the differences between the organism increases. See, here you can look at kingdom Animalia. It includes a wide variety of animals ranging from a black bear, polar bear, to fishes, amphibians, and much more. So the diversity here is much more when you compare it to a family or genus. Okay, this is the basis for understanding the taxonomic categorization. So moving on to my topic, which is order. So when you list down the taxonomic categorization, you can see that the order comes right after the family. So order will be an assemblage or a group of closely related families. It has less similar characters in comparison to different genera in a family. I'll explain the second statement in the next slide, but now let's look into a plant order, which is the order Polymoniales. Order Polymoniales consist of two main families, which is the family Convolvulaceae. It is a group of flowering plants or angiosperms with morphological characters similar to the one given in the picture. The other family included in order Polymoniales is family Solanaceae. Family Solanaceae is known as the nightshade family, or it includes many vegetable plants such as tomatoes, potatoes, capsicum, brinjal, and much more. So this is the order Polymoniales. Moving on, here you can see the family Convolvulaceae on the top hand side and family Solanaceae at the bottom. When you look at family Convolvulaceae alone, they seem to have similarities, at least in their morphological characters. And when you look at family Solanaceae alone, they too seem to have similarities. But when you combine these both families, family Solanaceae plus family Convolvulaceae, forming the order Polymoniales, the number of similarities decreases. So this is what we have tried to explain in the second statement. They have less similar characters in comparison to different genera in a family. Fun fact, tobacco, which is a weed, comes under the family Solanaceae, which includes many of the vegetables you eat on a regular daily basis. So moving on to the next, animal order, which is the order Carnivora. Order Carnivora includes two main families, which is the family Felidae. It's known as the cat family. It includes domesticated cats as well as wild cats like lions, tigers, leopards, jaguar, and much more. And the second family is family Canidae. It includes the dog, it's known as the dog and fox family. It includes domesticated dogs, foxes, hyenas, raccoon dogs, and much more. So this is the example of an animal order Carnivora. Moving on to the next categorization, which is class. So class would be a group of related orders. It includes related orders. Let's now directly jump into an example of a bigger and wider class, which is the class Mammalia. Class Mammalia includes many orders, but the two main important ones given in our textbook is the order Primata and the order Carnivora. Order Primata is the order to which we humans belong to. It includes lemur, monkeys, gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, and all other types of monkeys. Whereas order Carnivora, we just discussed it right now, it includes the cats and dog family, which is the lions, tigers, leopards, dogs, hyenas, raccoon dogs. So when it's easy to remember this by the fact that order Primata consists of us humans and order Carnivora includes man's two favorite pet animals, which is the dogs and cat. Actually, when you compare yourself with your pets, we seem to have a lot of differences. But look at here, we all come under the same class, which is the class Mammalia. This again shows that as you move higher, the differences increases. So let's move on to the next categorization, which is phylum. Phylum includes related classes, or classes having features in common constitute a phylum or division. It is phylum or division. Phylum is for animals, and an example is phylum Chordata, whereas division is for plants, and an example is division Angiospermae. Division Angiospermae is the division of flowering plants. It includes all variety of flowering plants. Now let's take a deep look into the phylum Chordata. Phylum Chordata. Phylum Chordata is the phylum to which we humans belong to. It includes 5 major classes, which is class Amphibia, Reptilia, Piscis, Aves, and class Mammalia. We know that we belong to the class Mammalia, and therefore we belong to the phylum Chordata. Now, what is the basis of characterization of animals into the phylum Chordata? It is the presence of a notochord or a dorsal hollow neural system. The notochord is what develops into the vertebral column in animals, and the dorsal hollow neural system develops into the central nervous system in animals. So we humans, as well as all these 5 classes, have these notochord and dorsal hollow neural system. Thus, we are classified into the phylum Chordata. Moving on to the last and final categorization, which is kingdom. Kingdom, as you all know, is the highest taxonomic categorization, and it includes related phyla or divisions. There are 2 main kingdoms, as you all know. It is the kingdom Animalia and kingdom Plantae. So this is the end of all the taxonomic categorization. Now let's look into an example of Homo sapiens, or as humans. We know that we belong to the kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Primata, family Hominidae. It's written hominids. It's like the people belonging to India are called Indians. Similarly, the people belonging to the family Hominidae are called hominids. Genus Homo and species Sapiens, and hence we have the scientific name Homo sapiens. Now I have a question for you. This question is very simple, that I had to remove the options to make it difficult. So which of the following options represent the correct classification of the given animal? Phylum, class, order, family, genus, or species? Anyone? To which phylum does this tiger belong to? Anyone? All right. The tiger belongs to the phylum Chordata due to the presence of a notochord or a dorsal hollow neural system. To which class does the tiger belong to? Class Mammalia. They are mammals. They come under the class Mammalia. Order Carnivora, family Felidae, and genus Panthera, species Tigris. And hence the scientific name Panthera tigris. When we handwrite it, we underline the scientific name separately. So this is it for my seminar. Thank you all. Thank you for your valuable time.
Okay, children, it's time to wind up. So before that, Malavika, very good. And you all have become professionals in preparing the PowerPoint presentations. And you're handling the topics also very well, better than your teacher. So I'm also feeling proud. But why you didn't answer the questions what she asked towards the end? You were hesitant, no? Okay. I don't think you were not knowing the answer. You were a bit hesitant to answer. That's what I felt. Okay, all can prepare PowerPoint presentations like this, and a few more are there, no? And the next chapter also. Now I think more will be interested to prepare. That's what I felt. You all have become experts. The last day's classes, today's classes also, I'm quite happy. Okay. May you do better than this. Thank you, children. See you next class.
Thank you.